Hello everyone, my name is Chip, and yes, I've lost my goddamn mind. I'm back again with another Chancellor Taxes deck. For those of you that haven't watched the previous video, Chancellor of the Annex reads, you may reveal this card in your opening hand. If you do, when each opponent casts their first spell of the game, counter that spell unless they pay 1. It has flying, and it has a Thalia style effect for every spell when it's on the battlefield, but it's a 7 mana angel and it's got 5/6 power. We're never casting this card. If we ever cast this card, something's gone horribly wrong. But somehow the Chancellor has returned, much like in a beloved franchise that I don't want to name drop here. So last time we tried a red-white version using Seasoned Pyromancer and Force of Virtue. I actually really liked the Force of Virtue and I've decided I'm going to give it a go in mono white. So we've got 4 Force of Virtue, 4 Chancellor of the Annex. That's our Chancellor engine. That's how we get the value out of it. But also to help us discard more cards, we're running Geier Sanitarium. Each player draws a card and discards a card. Now the issue with that is we're paying 2 mana and discarding a useless card, but also helping our opponent loot into better cards. Using the Sanitarium to improve our quality of cards is also helping our opponent improve their quality of cards. But their quality of cards should probably be better than ours because we're running this garbage. However, we have a little trick up our sleeve with Spirit of the Labyrinth. Spirit of the Labyrinth reads, each player can't draw more than 1 card each turn. Now this is an engine I've been working on for a couple of years now. I've never found a home for it, but I figured we're throwing everything else in here. Why not give it a go, hey? So when Spirit of the Labyrinth and Geier Sanitarium are together, if you activate Geier Sanitarium in your opponent's upkeep, you draw and discard a card, they draw and discard a card, and then they go to their draw step and they do not draw a card. Now what this does is it limits your opponent's hand size. And if they get to 0, you can effectively stop them drawing cards for the rest of the game. They can't respond with an instant to Geier Sanitarium when they have no cards in hand. Because it's a single action, you have to wait for the entire card to finish resolving before you gain priority and can cast a spell. So it kind of protects itself. The only issue is it's tied to an X1. And X1s die a lot, which is why I thought if we're running a deck with Force of Virtue, why not gamble on an X1? Alright, well, what's in this pile?
For our lands, we're running 4 Geier Sanitarium, 4 Ghost Quarter, 1 Horizon Canopy, 1 Sunbaked Canyon, and 11 basic plains.
For our 1-drops, we're running 4 Giver of Runes, 4 Path to Exile, 2 Thraben Inspector, and 4 Aether Vial. As far as I'm concerned, if you're running a Taxes deck, these are pretty much non-negotiable. The numbers might get moved around a bit, but I think you need some number of all of these cards in your main deck, no matter how janky it is. For the 2-drops, we are running the 4 Leonin Arbiter. We are running 4 Spirit of the Labyrinth. We are only running 2 Thalia Guardian of Thraben. Being an X1 is really bad. I cannot stress enough how bad being an X1 in Modern right now is really, really bad. She has a fantastic effect. She's been the backbone of Taxes for years. Being an X1 is really, really bad. We're also running 2 Ethersworn Canonist. Each player who has cast a non-artifact spell this turn can't cast an additional non-artifact spell. So most players get stuck only being able to cast 1 spell. Thalia can potentially stop something coming down. Ethersworn Canonist restricts it to being 1 per turn. Thalia is really good if you're worried about something like a Collected Company, because now it comes down a turn later, or a Wrath it comes down a turn later. If Thalia is doing a job, you won't know what your opponent's got, basically. Ethersworn Canonist, however, is really good in the matchups where Thalia is not very good, like Prowess, where they just kill your Thalia and go off like nothing happened. Ethersworn Canonist, they actually have to throw an actual burn spell at it. They can't just gut shot it. And then because they can only cast 1 spell per turn, we can then protect the Aethersworn Canonist with the Giver of Runes. Rounding out the 2-drops, we've got 2 Selfless Spirit, just another way to protect our creatures. Again, another X1. If we're running another X1, it needs to be an X1 that can do multiple things. This can protect multiple creatures, and it can fly and hit our opponent for 2 every turn. 3-drops, the top of the curve. It's not the top of the curve, but it's the top of the curve for mana that we're actually going to pay. We're running 3 Lurrus of the Dream Den. We've got a garbage engine and we're discarding a bunch of 2-drops and 1-drops. Lurrus of the Dream Den's fantastic. And then, yeah, we've just got the 4 Force of Virtue and 4 Chancellor of the Annex. Sideboard. We built a sideboard this time. We've got Rest in Peace for Grave Hate. Auriok Champion helps fix up our burn matchups and stuff, lets us get through. Same with Burrenton Forge-Tender. We're running 1 Fragmentize and 1 Disenchant. We've got a Containment Priest. It's good for Vial decks, things that can get around our Chancellor, like humans and stuff. They like to use Aether Vial, so Containment Priest can come in there. We're running a Singleton Stony Silence. We're running another 2 Ethersworn Canonist. In our bad matchups against mono red prowess, things like that, these will come in over the Thalias. Thalias will be taken out. There's no point running a Thalia just to have it die all the time. I suppose with Lurrus there's an argument that we could just keep recasting it, but I think Ethersworn Canonist and just locking our opponents is much better. Also, we are running 2 Tocatli Honor Guard. This comes in against decks like humans. We have no ETBs except for the Thraben Inspectors in our main deck. So, if we're versing something like humans, if we're versing something that uses a lot of ETBs, if we're versing a normal taxes deck, we take out our Thraben Inspectors, in come the Tocatlis. Simple as that. And rounding out the sideboard, we've got 2 Phyrexian Revoker. They can just come down and name a Planeswalker, stop it from activating. Mana rocks, Aether Vials, things like that. It's just a really good all-round card, and the fact that it's a creature that can be recast with Lurrus is really good as well. Let's go on to these, what I assume are going to be terrible, terrible games. Alright, we lose the die roll, but we get an opening hand with a Chancellor, lands and spells. That works for us. We reveal our Chancellor. Opponent leads on a tap land and passes to us. We draw a plains, so we run it out. We're just going to start on Giver of Runes. Opponent plays a Blackcleave Cliffs and plays an Inquisition of Kozilek. Okay. Do they pay the 1? They pay the 1. Okay. They take our Leonin Arbiter. It was the only choice, really. And they pass to us. We draw Force of Virtue. That works very well with our Chancellor in hand. We run out another plains, and we're just going to swing in for 1 with our Giver of Runes. Get in while you can, you know. Opponent plays a Blood Crypt, untapped, and runs out a Liliana of the Veil. They tick it down and we have to sack our only creature. And they pass to us. In their end step, we flash in our Force of Virtue, discarding the Chancellor. We draw a Spirit of the Labyrinth. We run out Ghost Quarter, and we play the Spirit of the Labyrinth. They've already seen the Geier reach, but we're just hoping they don't notice the interaction. We pass it to them. They shock themselves again with another Blood Crypt, run out a Young Pyromancer, and ransack the lab, getting themselves an Elemental token. Liliana ticks up, everyone has to discard a card, we discard our Horizon Canopy, they pass to us. We draw an Aether Vial, which unfortunately doesn't help us get in to this Liliana. We'll play the Geier Reach, and we'll run out the Aether Vial, but we are well and truly behind in this game. Pass to our opponent, in their upkeep, we activate Geier Reach Sanitarium, we draw and discard another Spirit of the Labyrinth. That hurts. Opponent plays a Kalitas, ticks up their Liliana, and passes to us. We draw a Ghost Quarter, which doesn't do it, unfortunately. We're going to stick with the resource denial plan. We're going to hold up the Ghost Quarter in case we draw something better. And then in their upkeep, we're going to activate the Sanitarium, draw a Sunbaked Canyon, we're going to discard the Ghost Quarter. Opponent ticks down, makes us sacrifice the Spirit of the Labyrinth. Realizing they're going to get a zombie token off this, we decide to scoop it up there. On to game 2. Alright, we get a hand with 3 Chancellor of the Annex. So you know what, we didn't come here to play well, we came here to have fun. So you know what, opponent? Your first spell is getting countered unless you pay 3 mana for it. We lead on Plains and Giver of Runes, and we just pass the turn there. Opponent leads on tap land, that's good. We draw a Leonin Arbiter. Well, we'll play a Plains, we'll run out the Arbiter, we've got Giver of Runes to protect it. We'll just pass the turn there. They play a Marsh Flats. So they haven't played a spell yet, it's going to get countered. And we've got a Ghost Quarter and they've got a fetch land. Pretty happy with our position here. We draw the Aether Vial. We run out the Aether Vial, play a Ghost Quarter, crack it immediately and hit that Lava Claw Reaches. They can't pay the Arbiter tax, and now they're stuck with effectively no lands. We swing in for 2 with the Arbiter, we pass the turn. Opponent realizes the predicament they are in and they scoop it up. Alright, game 3. We get a hand with 2 sideboard cards and a bunch of lands and an Aether Vial and a Force of Virtue. It's pretty good, but we didn't come here to play a hand that was pretty good. So we mull into a Chancellor. We reveal the Chancellor. Opponent leads with Blood Crypt, tapped. We draw an Auriok Champion. Play a Plains and pass the turn. Opponent plays a Blackcleave Cliffs. Casts an Inquisition. Pays for the Annex. And they take our Spirit of the Labyrinth. Okay. We draw another Spirit of the Labyrinth. Well, given that's the one they didn't want us to have, we're going to run it out. We pass the turn there. Opponent plays a Liliana of the Veil, and they make us sacrifice the Spirit of the Labyrinth. Okay. We draw a land, we run out the Sunbaked Canyon, and we're going to play the Auriok Champion, just planning on keeping Liliana under control with it. Opponent plays a tap land, ticks up the Liliana of the Veil. We discard a land in case we draw a Force of Virtue, and the opponent blows us out. They've got a second Liliana. They tick it down, and we lose our Auriok Champion. Disappointing. And they pass it there. We draw the Sanitarium. Okay, so hopefully we can loot into something a bit better. We did loot into a Force of Virtue. We're going to discard the Plains and we're going to hold up the Force of Virtue. Opponent rungs out a Young Pyromancer and casts Ransack the Lab, getting themselves an Elemental. In response to them ticking up the Liliana, we flash in our Force of Virtue and they discard another Liliana. We draw another Sanitarium. We crack our Sunbaked Canyon, reveal another Force of Virtue. We'll just pass it there. Opponent plays a Lightning Skelemental. Each player discards a card. We discard the Sanitarium. Opponent swings in for 9. Skelemental hits, makes us discard our Force of Virtue. They sack it in their end step. We draw a Lurrus. We have to play the Lurrus for no value, which is unfortunate, but it does price them into ticking down their Liliana. In their end step, they crack the Bloodstained Mire. Yep, they tick down the Liliana Veil, get rid of our Lurrus. They play a Marsh Flats, get a basic Swamp, and they animate their Lava Claw Reaches, pump it for 2, and they swing everything at us for 5. We take it down to 4. It's looking quite precarious. There's not much we can draw here. Path to Exile definitely helps. We pass holding up the Path. Opponent plays another Lightning Skelemental, ticks up the Liliana of the Veil. In response, we path the Skelemental. But really, we're just spinning our wheels here. There's nothing we can draw with the amount of lands we've got that can get us out of this now. So we're just going to scoop it up. It's a shame. We had a really good game too, but yeah, unfortunately they just had the perfect answer for our Auriok Champion was the second Liliana. I really thought we could keep that first one under, but well, that's what happens. Live by the Annex, die by the Annex. Alright, we win the die roll, so we go first. We get a good opening hand, but unfortunately there's no Chancellor. We decide to keep it. We lead on Plains into Aether Vial. Just going to play some good old honest taxes. Opponent starts on a Windswept Heath. Into a Godless Shrine. And they Thought Seize us. Ugh. This is exactly what we want Chancellor for. Ugh. So if we had the Chancellor there, then next turn we would have got to put down the Thalia and they wouldn't have been able to cast the Thought Seize without it getting countered over 2 turns. Oh well, they take our Thalia, so we know they hate our taxes. We're going to tick up our Aether Vial. We pull the Path. Okay, well, we play the Plains and we run out the Arbiter. Hopefully their next land's a fetch land and we pass it there. Opponent plays a Hissing Quagmire. It's not a fetch land, but it is a tap land. In their end step, we're going to vial in our Giver of Runes, make it really hard for them to deal with our Arbiter. We tick our Vial up to 2, we draw the Plains. We play the Plains, we swing in with the Leonin Arbiter. We decide not to deploy the Lurrus of the Dream Den. We're treating it a bit like Tireless Tracker, where you want to play it and get value immediately rather than play it and leave it vulnerable for a turn. I'm not sure if that's correct in this case, given we had the Giver of Runes to protect it, and it looks like our opponent would only be able to cast 1 spell, but it is what it is. And they Fatal Push the Giver of Runes in our end step, and they run out of Tarmogoyf and play a Castle Lochthwain. Now, I could path the Goyf here, and they'd have to pay 2, which they can't pay, so they wouldn't get a land. But the fact that they played the Goyf and the castle the way they did, and they Fatal Pushed the Giver of Runes, makes me think they have another Fatal Push. So I choose not to, because I really want to punish them for not being able to pay the Arbiter tax. So the best way we can do that is by making them unprofitably cast Fatal Push so we can then path in response. Alright, we tick our Vial up to 3. Now it's time to get some value. We draw a Chancellor, which is one of the problems in this deck. Sometimes you do just draw a Chancellor. We're going to Vial in our Lurrus. Lurrus is going to bring back our Giver of Runes. I considered getting the Thalia, but if we got Thalia, we wouldn't be able to path the Goyf anyway, so it's not like we're stopping this standoff. The only thing that happens is we lose our ability to respond on the following turn. Alright, we don't attack. We just pass it there. Opponent taps the Lochthwain, untaps the Lochthwain, taps the Lochthwain, untaps the Lochthwain, and decides to go to their main phase. They swing in with the Goyf. We're just going to take the hit. 4 life is not worth a Leonin Arbiter. They cast a Tireless Tracker. Now they are tapped out. So we path to exile the Tarmogoyf here. They play a Snow-Covered Swamp, getting themselves a clue. And we were correct. They did have the Fatal Push. Unfortunately, because we did path the Goyf, they're able to push our Lurrus. But that's alright. We'll survive. Lurrus won't, but we will. Alright, well, we're going to keep our Vial on 3 forever. We draw a Spirit of the Labyrinth. I suppose if we're worried about the game going long, because Vial now can only Vial in Lurrus, we could potentially just start ticking it up to 7 to Vial in the Chancellor. Alright, we're going to swing in with our Leonin Arbiter here. Our opponent sees our combat trick with Giver of Runes, opts not to block. We don't much mind, we just want to keep hitting in for damage. And we pass the turn there. Opponent deploys a Stoneforge Mystic, but they fail to pay the Arbiter tax like an idiot, and they don't get to search. Nah, it can be a confusing interaction, the Leonin Arbiter one, because you actually have to pay before you intend to search. You can't go, I am putting a search on the stack and now I am going to pay, and they pass to us. We draw a path to exile, and we just swing in with the Arbiter again. They block it with their Stoneforge Mystic, and we pass the turn. In our end step, they're going to Assassin's Trophy our Giver of Runes. Well, they can't pay the Arbiter tax now, so we're going to path their Tireless Tracker. We're going to give our Spirit of Labyrinth protection from red, and then because we're idiots as well, we fail to pay our own Arbiter tax and don't get a land. So who's the idiot now? Both of us. Alright, we pass it to them. They play a Godless Shrine. Okay, they've got some cards in the can with the clues and stuff. We're hoping they crack them in their steps, but they probably won't. Alright, well now it's turn 7, and we still haven't ticked this Vial up. I'm really starting to regret that. Alright, we draw a Thraben Inspector. That's good. That's another card in the can. We play our Thraben Inspector, and they crack their clue. We get our own clue token. Careful not to crack it in our own turn. And because they cracked the clue in our main phase, we are free to swing in for 5 here, whereas if they had waited, we wouldn't have attacked because they could threaten the Hissing Quagmire. Alright, we attack them down to 6, presenting lethal next turn if they don't leave up their Hissing Quagmire or kill something. They play a Dark Confidant and an Overgrown Tomb. Okay, that's certainly one way to get them back in the game. In their end step, we crack the clue, drawing another Arbiter, keep our Vial on 3, and we draw the Sanitarium. Alright, we now have them locked. We swing in with the Leonin Arbiter and the Thraben Inspector. Opponent goes for the block. Okay, because Dark Confidant was how they get out of that lock, because Dark Confidant does not draw, it puts the card in your hand, so he is unaffected by Spirit of the Labyrinth. But our opponent obviously hates our Leonin Arbiter. They trade it off, and we go to their upkeep. Both players draw discard. We draw another Spirit of the Labyrinth. We discard our Chancellor of the Annex. Opponent doesn't get a normal draw step. Alright, and they pass through their turn. We draw an Aether Vial. That looks like great fodder. No, we're going to play out the Aether Vial, I think. We're not going to get in. They're holding up the Hissing Quagmire. They activate the Castle Lochthwain. They get to draw a card, but they lose a life. They can only do that so many times. It does unfortunately buy them time. We activate the Sanitarium in their upkeep. They pitch a Thoughtseize. We pitch our Spirit of the Labyrinth, and they get a Stoneforge Mystic. Oh, that adds another card to their hand. They searched up a Batterskull too. Okay, so then they can start gaining life and drawing more cards with the Lochthwain. We are in trouble. We draw another Vial. We play out the Ghost Quarter, rot out Arbiter. We pass the turn there. Opponent activates the Lochthwain, draws a card and loses 2 life. We activate the Geier each and draw a Chancellor. Okay. Well, we're going to pitch the Aether Vial because we're actually, as ridiculous as it sounds, not too far off from casting the Chancellor if it comes to it. And they play a Tarmogoyf. Oh boy. And they pass to us. So if we'd just been ticking up this Vial from the start, we could already have this Chancellor in play and would have swung in the air. Alright, well we draw a Plains. So we're going to play the Plains. We're just going to pass it there. They use Stoneforge Mystic to put in the Batterskull. In their upkeep, we activate the lock again. And we draw a Selfless Spirit. Alright, well we're going to keep that over a flyer we can't cast yet. They swing in with the Batterskull. We Ghost Quarter the Lochthwain. They fail to pay the Arbiter tax. And they don't get to search. We're going to take the hit from the Batterskull down to 14. Our opponent's up to 6. And we're going to Vial in the Selfless Spirit in their end step. Alright, we draw a Sunbaked Canyon. We're just going to run it out. We're going to swing in the air for 2. Just try and keep our opponent's life total under control. In their upkeep, we crack the Sunbaked Canyon. Get a path to exile. We're going to path the Tarmogoyf. Opponent doesn't pay the Arbiter tax again. No one's paying it this game. And we're going to activate the Geier Sanitarium. Opponent swings in for 4. We're going to take it. We're drawing cards, they're not. We should eventually get there. Oh, but one of the cards they discarded was Lingering Souls. This presents a massive problem. Alright, we're going to keep our vials on 3 and 2. We draw yet another land. We're going to hold it in case we draw a better card with Geier each next turn. We activate the garbage engine in their upkeep, and we draw a Ghost Quarter. Alright, well, we're going to hold on to Ghost Quarter. Opponent attacks, but only with the Batter Skull. Okay, well, we're just happy to take that for now. And they pass to us. We draw a Thraben Inspector. Okay. Well, we play out the Ghost Quarter, and we'll play our Thraben Inspector, and we'll pass to our opponent. Once again, stopping them from drawing cards. Oh, and they hit another Lingering Souls. Okay, we are in trouble. They swing in with the Batter Skull. We have to block this time, so we put the Thraben Inspector under the bus. They're not swinging with the tokens, and I don't know why. I'm worried they have a plan. Alright, we draw a Chancellor that we just can't quite cast. Literally one land away from casting it. Alright, well, we'll stay back and we'll pass the turn. In their upkeep, once again, we use the Sanitarium. We'll put Thraben Inspector in front of that germ. We've stumped them on resources, but they're fighting the good fight, and I'm really worried we're still going to lose. But they didn't cast the Lingering Souls. That's interesting. I wonder if they didn't cast it maybe because they're trying to protect the Batter Skull. So they can pay 3, protect the Batter Skull, pay 2 with the Stoneforge Mystic, put it back into play. That way we can't get around it. All right, well, we draw another Selfless Spirit. So we're just going to hold that up for now. We activate the Geier, and we draw a Lurrus. Okay, that can be our way out of there. Well, we're just going to ditch the Selfless Spirit. Opponent swings in with the Germ token. We vial in our Lurrus. We put Arbiter and Lurrus in front of the Germ token. We then sack our Selfless Spirit to give Indestructible. This prices them into bouncing the Batter Skull, and then they pass to us. We draw a Force of Virtue. That's very good, especially when our life total is so low and we've got a life linker. Well, we have to replay this Selfless Spirit. Lurrus is such a house in this deck. Like, not only are we only looting when they're discarding cards and not drawing new ones, but we also get to recast so much of our stuff. I love this engine. It is a terrible engine, but I love it. Alright, Stoneforge is going to activate, putting the Batter Skull into play in our end step. We activate Geier Sanitarium. We draw Leonin Arbiter. Well, we're just going to ditch that. We actually missed an opportunity to take them off the Hissing Quagmire earlier, I've just noticed. Opponent swings in with the Germ. We put Lurrus and Arbiter in front of it again. Sacrifice the Selfless Spirit. Give everything indestructible. This time they let it go. Okay, so we go up to 7 life. And they equip the Batter Skull to a Spirit. Alright, well in response, we Ghost Quarter the Hissing Quagmire. They can't pay the cost, so now they're down to 4 lands. So now their bouncing shenanigans might be under control. We flash in the Force of Virtue, exiling our Chancellor. Make our board all that much bigger. We draw another Force of Virtue. Alright, well, we have to play a Selfless Spirit. It's the only creature in our graveyard with flying, or else we'd just be dead to these tokens. We activate the engine again. We draw a Thalia. We're just going to discard that. It's not helpful right now. Our opponent's not really casting spells. Talking of which, they do cast the next Lingering Souls from their graveyard, and they swing in the air. Alright, well, we're going to block the small one. This keeps our Selfless Spirit around, even though we're down to 2, but it means that because we have another Selfless Spirit in the bin, we can stop ourselves from dying, which I think is the ideal, really. And yes, we go to our main phase, and we cast the Selfless Spirit, and we'll just pass it there. We loot, we hit another Spirit of the Labyrinth. That's very good. This means we might actually start being able to swing around a Batter Skull. Alright, they swing in with their spirits. We put 1 in front of the Batter Skull, and 1 in front of a normal spirit. The spirit with the Batter Skull will eat our other spirit. We really should have sacked in response, but we forgot. We exile our Spirit of the Labyrinth, put our other Force of Virtue into play. It's getting to the point where our spirits will be able to challenge the Batter Skull spirit, and we draw the path to exile. Okay, well, we have to run out the other Selfless Spirit, pass to our opponent. We're going to loot again. It's another Force of Virtue. Unfortunately, path is what's going to win us this game, I think, so we have to discard it. They swing in with the spirits. We chump with 1, block with the other. We remember to sack this time, so our opponent's not going to gain life. And our opponent, realizing they're out of spirits, doesn't even need to see the path. They just scoop it up. Okay. Unfortunately, this opponent doesn't come back for game 2 or 3. I guess they just had too much fun. They didn't even face a Chancellor in that one. It was just a good, strong taxes list, and I guess they had no interest in playing against it. And in fairness, even we forgot about the Arbiter tax, but we got a lot of lands. We got a lot of value off that Arbiter. All right, well, on to the next one. Alrighty, we win the die roll, so we go first. We get a risky one-lander, but we've got the Aether Vial, so we keep. We lead on the Geier Sanitarium, run out our Aether Vial, just pass the turn. Opponent plays a Flooded Strand, cracks it immediately, gets an island, plays a Serum Visions. And they pass to us. We tick up our Vial, draw a Giver of Runes, and we'll pass holding up Vial. Opponent plays a Steam Vents, tapped, and just passes back to us. In their end step, we're going to Vial in our Giver of Runes. We tick up our Vial again, we draw the Force of Virtue. We pass the turn just holding open Vial. Opponent plays a Scalding Tarn, cracks it immediately, gets an island, and casts a Blood Moon. And they pass to us. In their end step, we're going to Vial in our Ethersworn Canonist. Makes their cantrips a bit worse. We keep our Vial on 2, and we draw the basic planes. We play the planes and run out our Spirit of the Labyrinth. Now we've got 2 creatures making their cantrips worse. And we'll swing in with the Canonist for 2. Opponent plays another island, and just passes to us. In their end step, we're going to Vial in our Selfless Spirit. We keep our Vial on 2. Our opponent Cryptic taps our team. So we run out the Thraben Inspector in our second main, get a clue token, and we'll just pass it there. Opponent plays the Royal Scions. Okay, what are they going to do with that, I wonder? Well, they tick it up, and that says, draw a card, then discard a card. But they've already drawn a card, and Spirit of the Labyrinth says you can't draw more than one. It doesn't counter the ability, it just makes them discard a card. Which is basically the reason you run Spirit of the Labyrinth. Things like this. Well, they're disappointed and they pass the turn. We decide to keep the Vial on 2. Go to combat and swing in with everything except the Giver. Opponent flashes in a Snapcaster Mage as an Ambush Viper. They try to block the Spirit of the Labyrinth. We're going to give it Pro Blue. They go down to 11. And we'll pass the turn. Opponent tries to abrade our Spirit of the Labyrinth. We're going to crack our clue, and then sack the Selfless Spirit to give our entire board indestructible. They tick up their Royal Scions, not discarding a card this time. In their end step, we flash in a Force of Virtue, discarding a Chancellor. We tick our Vial up to 3, go to combat and swing with the whole team. Opponent flashes in a Snapcaster Mage, targets the Abrade in their graveyard, blocks our Spirit of the Labyrinth. We let it die, but in our second main, we're going to Vial in our Lurrus and cast the Spirit of the Labyrinth. And with that on the stack, the opponent concedes. All right, well done. Oh, I would have loved to have seen their face when their Royal Silence made them discard a card. Oh, that's not what you want. All right, our opponent lost and they get to go first. We get a pretty good 7, so we're going to keep. They lead on Steam Vents, tapped, and they pass to us. We draw a Giver. 7 just got better. We lead on Vial, and we pass the turn there. Opponent plays an island, and plays a Thing in the Ice. We're not too worried about that. We've got Aethersworn Canonist and Spirit of the Labyrinth. It's really hard to cantrip into multiple small spells when you can only cast 1 spell a turn and you can't draw cards off it. Alright, well, we tick our Aether Vial up to 1. We draw the Path to Exile. We'll run out the Aethersworn Canonist, and we just pass the turn there. Opponent plays a Scalding Tarn, cracks it immediately, a basic island, and runs out the Vidillion Click. In response, we run out our Force of Virtue, and Vial in our Giver of Runes. They take away our Path to Exile and we draw a Chancellor of the Annex. Not what we want to see at this point in the game, but they pass the turn there. Vial ticks up to 2 and we draw the Geier. We're going to Vial in the Spirit of the Labyrinth and we're just planning on using the Geier to get the Garbage Engine online and just eventually make it so our opponent can't play Magic anymore. Alright, stop in their upkeep. We activate the Geier. We get to loot, so do they. We discard our Chancery Annex, they discard a Snapcaster Mage. They play a Polluted Delta, and now they are down to 3 cards in hand. They crack the Polluted Delta for a Steam Vents, untapped. They swing in with the Vidillion Click. We can't stop it, so we take 3, down to 17, and post-combat they cast an Anger of the Gods. Okay. Thing in the Ice removes a counter. We're going to use our Giver of Runes to protect our Spirit of the Labyrinth, because that's how we're going to win this game. Alright, a bunch of stuff gets exiled, and they pass to us. We keep our Vial on 2 and draw a Plains. We'll run out the Horizon Canopy, swing in with our Spirit of the Labyrinth. Opponent takes it down to 12, and we'll pass it to them. And we activate the Garbage Engine once again. We draw another Spirit of the Labyrinth. Okay. Opponent discards an Opt. Ooh, and they've got the Fry. Okay. So Fry will kill our Spirit of the Labyrinth. What they don't know is we're very lucky. So in their end step, we Vial in another Spirit of the Labyrinth. We're going to keep the Vial on 2. And we draw another Spirit of the Labyrinth. Okay, so even if they find a way to deal with this one that's out, we've still got this garbage engine online. Well, we're going to swing in again. Opponent doesn't block it. Down to 8. We'll pass the turn. In their upkeep, we activate again. Easy pick for us on what to discard. Opponent discards another Anger of the Gods. They play a Snapcaster Mage. Target the Fry. Yep, they fry our Spirit of the Labyrinth. Yep, that's 2 down. In their end step, we reveal to them that we are the luckiest players in the world, and we run out another one. Keep our Vial on 2. We draw a plane, so we're just going to play it. No attacks, and we'll pass the turn there. Alright, in their upkeep, they've got no cards in hand. We're going to make them draw discard. We draw a Path to Exile that we have to discard. That's unfortunate. They've seen the lock. They've gone through their draw phase. They've realized they don't get to draw any more cards. Eventually, we will draw into gas, and we will be able to deal with their board. And that is the inevitability of this garbage engine. It's difficult to set up, but when it works, it works. Sometimes it requires you to get lucky and draw 3 Spirit of the Labyrinths in the row. But that's why you run 4 Spirit of the Labyrinths. Alright, we're testing out the mono-white version of Chancellor of the Annex. Was it any good? No. It's a fun effect, but no. No, it's not. You're down a card in your opening hand. Force of Virtue undoes some of that damage. The Geier Sanitarium engine undoes some of that damage, but you're still down a card. I think if I was going to do this again, I would put red back in and I would run Cinnamon Spirit Guides. Being able to go Chancellor, you don't get to play your turn 1 play. You don't get to play your turn 1 play because Thalia is in play, and you don't get to play your turn 1 play on turn 2 because Chancellor is going to stop you. And then at that point, we can start snowballing into other taxes style effects. I think that's definitely what we'll try and do next time. Very impressed with the garbage engine. I've been trying to use this engine for years, but it's not good. It's not good at all, but it came through in a couple of games. Even in games where, we couldn't get the lockdown for the whole game. Just being able to stop your opponent drawing. We ended up losing the game. It was against red-black. But it's definitely a very powerful engine if you can get it going. So maybe this shell with the Spirit of the Labyrinths and the Geier Sanitarium, maybe that's something we need to work on a bit more. I have explored it in the past, but we've had a lot of cards printed since then. So we'll see what we've got that we can play with. Because being able to loot every turn and make your opponent discard is very powerful. Alright, well look, tell you what, leave it with me. Thank you all for watching. I upload videos every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. If you liked the video, leave a like. If there's something I messed up or you want to suggest an idea, by all means leave a comment. And until next time, have fun.